My name is Madison, and I am 24 years old. 3 months ago, I discovered that my parents had been lying to me my entire life about money that was rightfully mine. What started as a casual conversation with my grandmother during Thanksgiving dinner turned into the most devastating family revelation imaginable. The college fund my deceased grandfather had specifically set aside for my education had been secretly transferred to my spoiled younger sister Emma for her luxury lifestyle. Now, as I sit in the courthouse waiting for the verdict that could either vindicate me or destroy what remains of our family forever, I realize this moment will define everything. Hey everyone! Before we dive into this incredible story of family betrayal and justice, I would love to know where you are watching from right now. Drop your location in the comments below and smash that like button if you are ready for some serious family drama. Make sure to subscribe because this story has twists that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you will want to see how this explosive family revenge unfolds until the very end. Growing up in suburban Denver, I always knew my sister Emma was the golden child. While I worked part-time jobs throughout high school to save for college, Emma received everything she wanted without question. Designer clothes, a brand new car for her 16th birthday, expensive vacations that somehow I was never invited to join. My parents, Robert and Susan, constantly explained that money was tight when I asked for help with college expenses, yet Emma never seemed to face these same financial constraints. I graduated high school with a 3.9 GPA and received partial scholarships, but still needed substantial financial assistance for my dream school. My parents apologetically explained that they simply could not afford to help me. I watched Emma cruise through her senior year while I attended community college, working 2 jobs to eventually transfer to a state university. The resentment built slowly, but I convinced myself that families sometimes have different financial circumstances for different children. Emma graduated high school with mediocre grades but somehow attended an expensive private college across the country. When I questioned this discrepancy, my parents vaguely mentioned scholarships and financial aid packages. I focused on my own education and career, eventually landing a decent job in marketing after graduation. Meanwhile, Emma continued her luxurious lifestyle, frequently posting social media photos from expensive restaurants, designer shopping trips, and exotic vacations. The truth began unraveling during last Thanksgiving dinner at my grandmother Dorothy's house. Emma was bragging about her upcoming graduation trip to Europe, funded by what she casually mentioned as her remaining college fund money. I nearly choked on my stuffing when she said those words. My grandmother's face went completely pale, and she excused herself from the dinner table. I followed her into the kitchen, where she was gripping the counter with trembling hands. Dorothy looked at me with tears in her eyes and asked quietly if my parents had ever mentioned my college fund. Confused, I told her they had always said no such fund existed. My grandmother's expression shifted from sadness to absolute fury. She explained that my grandfather had specifically established a substantial college fund in my name when I was born, designating me as the sole beneficiary because I was the first grandchild and had always shown academic promise. The fund contained over $60,000, carefully invested and grown over the years specifically for my higher education. My grandfather had made my parents promise to use this money exclusively for my college expenses, never for Emma or any other purpose. Dorothy had assumed the fund had been used appropriately when I went to community college, thinking perhaps I had chosen that path for other reasons. She never questioned why I seemed to struggle financially during my college years. That evening, Dorothy retrieved the original documentation from my grandfather's safe. The legal papers clearly stated that the fund was established solely for Madison Elizabeth Thompson's educational expenses. My hands shook as I read the documents, realizing that my parents had blatantly violated my grandfather's wishes and my legal rights. The money that should have paid for my education had instead funded Emma's extravagant lifestyle and expensive private school experience. Confronting my parents that night was one of the most difficult conversations of my life. Initially, they denied everything, claiming Dorothy was confused or misremembering details. When I presented the documentation, their story changed to justifying their decision. They argued that Emma needed more support because she was less academically inclined, and that I had proven I could succeed without financial assistance. Their rationalization felt like a knife twisting in my heart. My father actually had the audacity to suggest that I should be grateful for learning independence and self-reliance. My mother tearfully claimed they had planned to tell me eventually and somehow make things right. The gaslighting and manipulation were overwhelming, but the evidence was undeniable. They had stolen my inheritance and given it to my sister, fundamentally altering the trajectory of my entire adult life. That night, I realized that my relationship with my parents had been built on a foundation of lies and favoritism that ran much deeper than I had ever imagined. The financial theft was devastating, but the emotional betrayal cut even more deeply. I had spent years believing I was not worth investing in, when the truth was that someone had specifically invested in my future, and my own parents had stolen that opportunity. The weeks following my discovery were filled with a strange mixture of grief and crystallizing anger. I took time off work to process the magnitude of my parents' betrayal while researching my legal options. The more I investigated, the clearer it became that this was not just a family disagreement but actual financial fraud. My grandfather's will and the accompanying trust documents were legally binding, and my parents had willfully violated those terms. I scheduled consultations with 3 different attorneys specializing in trust and estate law. Each lawyer confirmed what I suspected: my parents had committed theft and breach of fiduciary duty. The fund had been specifically designated for my education, and redirecting those funds to Emma constituted a clear violation of my grandfather's wishes and my legal rights. The attorneys estimated that with interest and investment growth, the fund should have been worth approximately $80,000 by the time I graduated high school. During this period, I made a conscious decision to maintain normal contact with my family while secretly building my case. This required an extraordinary level of emotional control, but I knew that any premature confrontation could jeopardize my legal position. I attended family dinners, responded to text messages, and maintained the facade of normalcy while documenting every interaction and gathering additional evidence. Dorothy became my secret ally in this process, providing crucial documentation and serving as a witness to my grandfather's intentions. She was devastated by her son's betrayal and fully supported my decision to pursue legal action. Dorothy had always suspected something was wrong but had trusted my parents to honor my grandfather's wishes. Her guilt over not intervening earlier motivated her to help me seek justice now. I also began investigating Emma's lifestyle more thoroughly, documenting her expensive purchases and travels through social media posts. The evidence painted a clear picture of someone living far beyond what her part-time retail job could support. Every designer handbag, every exotic vacation, every expensive dinner represented money that should have funded my education. The documentation would prove essential in demonstrating how the stolen funds had been used. My strategy involved gathering comprehensive evidence before making any legal moves. I obtained copies of all relevant financial records, trust documents, and my grandfather's will. I documented my own financial struggles during college, including student loan records, work schedules, and academic transcripts showing how financial stress had impacted my educational experience. The contrast between my financial hardship and Emma's luxury lifestyle would be stark and compelling. I also began reaching out to extended family members who might serve as character witnesses or provide additional evidence about my grandfather's intentions. Several relatives confirmed that my grandfather had frequently mentioned the college fund he had established for me and his hopes for my educational future. These conversations revealed that multiple family members had assumed the fund had been used appropriately and were shocked to learn the truth. The emotional toll of maintaining this double life was exhausting. Sitting across from my parents at dinner, listening to them discuss family plans and future holidays, knowing they had stolen from me for years, required incredible self-restraint. There were moments when I wanted to explode and confront them immediately, but I knew that patience and careful planning would ultimately serve me better. Emma remained completely oblivious to the brewing situation, continuing to post about her luxurious lifestyle funded by my stolen inheritance. Her casual entitlement and lack of awareness about the source of her privileges made the situation even more infuriating. She had benefited from my grandfather's generosity without ever knowing or acknowledging that sacrifice, while I had struggled unnecessarily for years. I used this planning period to also focus on my emotional healing and personal growth. I started therapy to process the complex feelings of betrayal, anger, and grief that came with discovering my family's deception. Understanding my emotional reactions helped me approach the legal process with clarity rather than pure rage. I wanted justice, not just revenge, and that distinction became important as I moved forward. By the end of this strategic phase, I had built an ironclad case with comprehensive documentation and strong legal representation. I had also mentally prepared myself for the reality that pursuing justice might permanently damage or destroy my relationship with my immediate family. The choice between family harmony and personal justice was clear. I deserved to fight for what was rightfully mine, regardless of the consequences. The moment of truth was approaching, and I was ready to demand accountability for years of lies, favoritism, and financial theft that had shaped my entire adult life. The legal papers were filed on a cold Monday morning in February, exactly 3 months after my devastating Thanksgiving discovery. I had chosen to serve my parents with the lawsuit at their workplace to maximize the impact and ensure they could not avoid receiving the documents. My attorney advised that this approach would demonstrate the seriousness of my intentions and prevent any attempts to ignore or dismiss the legal action. My father received his papers during a staff meeting at the accounting firm where he had worked for over 20 years. According to a colleague who later contacted me, Robert's face went completely white as he read the documents. He excused himself from the meeting and spent the rest of the day making frantic phone calls. My mother received her papers at the elementary school where she taught 3rd grade, creating a spectacle that quickly became gossip throughout the faculty lounge. The lawsuit demanded full restitution of the college fund plus interest, totaling approximately $95,000. It also sought punitive damages for emotional distress and the financial hardship I had endured due to their theft. The legal document outlined every detail of their deception, from the original trust establishment through years of lies about their financial inability to support my education while simultaneously funding Emma's luxurious lifestyle. Within hours of the papers being served, my phone began buzzing constantly with calls and texts from my parents. I had prepared for this moment by changing my approach to communication entirely. Every phone call was recorded with my attorney's guidance, and every text message was saved as evidence. My parents alternated between desperate pleading, angry accusations, and attempted emotional manipulation. My father's initial response was predictably defensive, claiming that I was being ungrateful and destroying the family over money. He argued that parents have the right to make decisions about family finances and that pursuing legal action was vindictive and unnecessary. His arrogance and refusal to acknowledge any wrongdoing strengthened my resolve rather than weakening it. My mother took a different approach, employing tears, guilt trips, and emotional manipulation. She claimed that the family stress was affecting her health and that I was being cruel by pursuing legal action instead of working things out privately. She repeatedly emphasized how much they loved me and how this situation was breaking her heart. Her manipulation tactics were transparent and infuriating. Emma's reaction was the most revealing of all. When she finally understood the situation, her primary concern was not the ethical implications of benefiting from stolen money, but rather how the lawsuit might affect her own financial security. She had become so accustomed to receiving money without working for it that the possibility of losing that support system terrified her more than the moral implications of the theft. During this escalation phase, I discovered that my parents' financial deception extended beyond just my college fund. Dorothy revealed additional information about other family financial matters, including inheritance money that should have been distributed differently and investment accounts that had been mismanaged. The pattern of financial manipulation within our family was more extensive than I had initially realized. My extended family became divided as news of the lawsuit spread. Some relatives supported my decision to pursue justice, recognizing that my parents had violated clear legal and ethical boundaries. Others urged me to drop the legal action and handle the matter privately, prioritizing family harmony over accountability. These conversations revealed long-standing family dynamics and loyalties that I had never previously understood. Several cousins and aunts reached out privately to share their own experiences with my parents' questionable financial behavior over the years. These stories painted a picture of a pattern of manipulation and dishonesty that extended far beyond my individual situation. Hearing these accounts validated my decision and helped me understand that this legal action might prevent future victims within our extended family. My grandmother Dorothy became increasingly vocal in her support, even offering to testify against her own son in court. Her willingness to prioritize truth and justice over family loyalty was both heartbreaking and inspiring. She had loved my grandfather deeply and was determined to honor his wishes regardless of the personal cost. The emotional support from unexpected allies helped counterbalance the stress of family members who criticized my decision. Friends who learned about the situation were universally supportive, many expressing shock that parents would steal from their own child's education fund. Their outrage on my behalf helped validate my feelings and reinforced that my pursuit of justice was reasonable and necessary. As the legal process moved forward, my parents attempted various negotiation strategies to avoid a public trial. They offered partial restitution, proposed payment plans, and suggested family mediation as alternatives to continuing the lawsuit. However, their offers always came with conditions requiring me to sign non-disclosure agreements or accept significantly less than full restitution. I realized that accepting any settlement that included silence would allow my parents to continue their narrative that this was a family misunderstanding rather than actual theft. The truth needed to be fully exposed, both for my own healing and to prevent them from manipulating other family members in the future. Their refusal to accept full responsibility made compromise impossible. The turning point came when Emma finally understood that she might be required to return money she had already spent on her lifestyle. Her panic and anger revealed the depth of her entitlement and her complete lack of understanding about the ethics of the situation. She began pressuring my parents to make the situation go away, not because she felt guilty, but because she feared losing her financial support. This family crisis had exposed the true character of each family member involved, and those revelations were as valuable as any financial restitution I might ultimately receive. I was fighting not just for money, but for truth, accountability, and my own sense of justice in a situation where I had been systematically deceived and disadvantaged for years. The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined, but the weight of the moment felt enormous as I sat beside my attorney waiting for the proceedings to begin. 6 months had passed since filing the lawsuit, and today would finally bring resolution to years of lies and financial theft. My parents sat across the aisle with their lawyer, refusing to make eye contact with me. Emma had chosen not to attend, claiming she could not handle the stress of watching our family torn apart in public. My attorney had prepared meticulously for this moment, organizing every piece of evidence into a compelling narrative that would be impossible to dispute. The original trust documents, my grandfather's will, financial records showing the fund transfers, documentation of Emma's expensive lifestyle, and evidence of my financial struggles during college created an overwhelming case. We had also gathered character witnesses who could testify about my grandfather's specific intentions for the college fund. Dorothy was the first witness called to testify, and her presence in the courtroom sent a clear message about family loyalty versus justice. Despite the emotional difficulty of testifying against her own son, she spoke clearly and definitively about my grandfather's wishes and the specific instructions he had given regarding my education fund. Her testimony was powerful because it came from someone with no financial stake in the outcome, only a commitment to honoring her late husband's intentions. The financial documentation presented by my attorney painted a devastating picture of systematic deception. Bank records showed the exact dates when money had been transferred from my designated education fund to accounts used for Emma's expenses. The timeline correlated perfectly with Emma's enrollment at expensive private school, her luxury purchases, and her exotic travel experiences. Every designer handbag and European vacation could be directly traced to money that should have funded my education. My parents' attorney attempted to argue that parents have discretionary authority over family finances and that emotional distress damages were excessive. However, the trust documents were legally binding and clearly designated me as the sole beneficiary. The defense strategy fell apart when confronted with the explicit language of my grandfather's will and the fiduciary responsibilities that came with managing trust funds. The most powerful moment came when I testified about the impact of their deception on my life. I described working multiple jobs during college, accumulating student debt that could have been avoided, and the emotional toll of believing my own parents considered me unworthy of investment. The contrast with Emma's lifestyle during the same period was stark and undeniable. The courtroom was completely silent as I explained how their lies had shaped my entire adult life. My parents' testimony was uncomfortable to witness, as they attempted to justify their actions while avoiding direct responsibility. My father claimed he had planned to repay the fund eventually and that Emma had needed more support because she was less academically capable. My mother tearfully insisted they had always intended to make things right but had been overwhelmed by financial pressures. Their explanations sounded hollow and self-serving under cross-examination. The judge's questions during the proceedings indicated skepticism about my parents' justifications for redirecting trust funds. Legal precedent strongly favored honoring explicit trust designations, and emotional arguments about family financial decisions carried little weight against documented theft. The judge seemed particularly troubled by the systematic nature of the deception and the years-long pattern of lies about family finances. Emma's absence from the courtroom spoke volumes about her character and her unwillingness to face the consequences of benefiting from stolen money. However, her social media posts and documented expenses provided damning evidence of how the funds had been used. Every luxury purchase she had casually shared online became evidence of the lifestyle she had enjoyed at my expense. The financial calculations presented by my attorney were comprehensive and devastating. The original college fund, with appropriate investment growth and interest, should have been worth over $100,000 by the time I finished college. Adding the emotional distress and punitive damages we were seeking brought the total restitution request to $150,000. The amount was significant enough to ensure serious consequences for their actions. Character witnesses who testified on my behalf included former professors who remembered my financial struggles, employers who had watched me work multiple jobs during college, and extended family members who recalled my grandfather's specific intentions for the education fund. Their testimony painted a picture of someone who had been systematically denied opportunities while watching a sibling benefit from stolen resources. The defense's attempt to portray this as a family disagreement rather than theft crumbled under the weight of evidence. Trust law is clear about fiduciary responsibilities, and emotional arguments about family dynamics cannot override legal obligations. My parents had not just made poor financial decisions, they had committed documented theft with clear victims and clear beneficiaries of their crimes. As closing arguments concluded, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and anticipation that had built over months of legal preparation. Regardless of the financial outcome, the truth had been fully exposed in a public forum where my parents could no longer control the narrative or manipulate the facts. Their years of gaslighting and emotional manipulation had been replaced by objective evidence and legal accountability. The judge announced that the verdict would be delivered the following week, giving both sides time to prepare for whatever resolution awaited. As I left the courtroom that day, I realized that I had already won something more valuable than money, the validation that my feelings of betrayal were justified and that holding people accountable for their actions, even family members, was the right choice. The verdict came down like a thunderclap that reverberated through our entire extended family network. Judge Morrison ruled in my favor on every single count, ordering my parents to pay full restitution of $128,000 plus court costs and attorney fees. The judge's written opinion was scathing, describing their actions as a clear violation of fiduciary duty and a betrayal of trust that had caused documented financial and emotional harm to their own daughter. The financial penalty was devastating for my parents, who had assumed their family connections and emotional manipulation would somehow protect them from serious consequences. They were forced to liquidate retirement investments, take out loans against their house, and completely restructure their financial lives to meet the court-ordered payments. The comfortable middle-class lifestyle they had maintained while denying me educational support crumbled almost immediately. Emma's reaction to the verdict was pure panic mixed with self-righteous indignation. She had somehow convinced herself that she deserved the money more than I did because she had received it first, displaying a twisted logic that revealed the depth of her entitlement. When she realized that her parents would no longer be able to financially support her lifestyle, her true character emerged in ways that shocked even me. Within days of the verdict, Emma began a social media campaign attempting to portray herself as the victim of family drama and legal vindictiveness. She posted lengthy emotional appeals describing how the lawsuit had destroyed our family and ruined her financial security. The posts revealed someone completely incapable of understanding the ethical implications of living on stolen money for years while her sister struggled unnecessarily. My parents' marriage began showing serious strain almost immediately after the financial reality of the judgment set in. Years of poor financial decisions and dishonest behavior had finally caught up with them, and they began blaming each other for the situation rather than accepting responsibility for their joint actions. The stress of losing their comfortable lifestyle and facing family ostracism created tensions that had apparently been building for years. My father's reputation at his accounting firm was severely damaged when news of the verdict spread through their professional community. Clients began questioning whether someone who would steal from his own daughter's education fund could be trusted with their financial affairs. He was eventually forced to resign from several professional organizations and lost multiple long-term clients who felt his personal ethics called his professional competence into question. My mother faced similar consequences at the elementary school where she had taught for over 15 years. While she was not formally disciplined, the school community learned about the situation through local news coverage of the trial. Parents began requesting that their children be transferred to other classrooms, and the administration made it clear that her contract would not be renewed for the following academic year. The extended family fallout was swift and decisive in ways I had not anticipated. Several relatives who had initially urged me to handle the matter privately now expressed support for my decision to pursue legal action once the full scope of my parents' deception became clear. Others remained loyal to my parents but were forced to acknowledge that their behavior had been legally and ethically wrong. Dorothy emerged as an unexpected pillar of strength during this chaotic period, despite the pain of watching her own son face legal consequences for his actions. She had lost her husband, discovered her son was a thief, and watched her family implode, yet she remained steadfast in her support for justice and accountability. Her courage in choosing truth over family loyalty inspired me during the most difficult moments. The financial restitution began arriving in structured payments as ordered by the court, but the emotional healing was more complex and gradual. Having my feelings validated by a legal judgment was powerful, but it could not undo years of gaslighting, favoritism, and emotional manipulation. Therapy helped me process the complex mixture of relief, grief, and anger that came with achieving justice while losing my family relationships. Emma's financial panic led to increasingly desperate behavior as she realized her parents could no longer subsidize her lifestyle. She attempted to get loans using her parents as co-signers, applied for credit cards to maintain her spending habits, and even reached out to extended family members asking for financial support. Her complete inability to adjust to living within her actual means was both pathetic and revealing. My parents made several attempts to reconcile with me during this period, but their efforts were focused on minimizing consequences rather than accepting responsibility. They wanted forgiveness without accountability, relationship repair without acknowledging the full scope of their betrayal. Every conversation revealed that they still did not understand the magnitude of what they had done or the lasting impact of their choices. The social dynamics within our community shifted dramatically as news of the trial spread. Some people expressed shock that family financial disputes could escalate to legal action, while others were outraged that parents would steal from their child's education fund. The situation became a cautionary tale about the importance of financial transparency and ethical behavior within families. Professional colleagues who learned about my situation were universally supportive, with many sharing their own stories of family financial conflicts and betrayals. The experience taught me that family dysfunction around money is more common than people typically discuss, and that holding family members accountable for theft and deception is both necessary and brave. As the immediate chaos of the verdict settled into a new reality, I began to understand that this legal victory was just the beginning of a longer healing process. The money would help me achieve financial goals that had been delayed by my parents' theft, but rebuilding my sense of trust and family connection would take much more time and intentional effort. 1 year after the court verdict, my life had transformed in ways both expected and surprising. The financial restitution allowed me to pay off all my student loans, establish a solid emergency fund, and even make a down payment on my first house. But the deeper changes were emotional and psychological, representing a fundamental shift in how I understood family, loyalty, and personal worth that went far beyond money. My relationship with my parents remained fractured, though we had established minimal contact for major holidays and family emergencies. They had completed their court-ordered payments but had never offered a genuine apology or acknowledgement of the full impact of their actions. Their continued attempts to minimize the situation and rush toward forgiveness without accountability made meaningful reconciliation impossible. Emma had moved across the country after exhausting her local support network and burning bridges with extended family members. Her social media presence became sporadic and eventually disappeared entirely as she was forced to confront the reality of supporting herself financially for the first time in her adult life. Several family members reported that she had finally gotten a full-time job and was slowly learning to live within her means. The most unexpected development was the strength of my relationship with Dorothy, who had become more like a true parent to me than my biological parents ever were. She had shown courage in choosing truth over family loyalty, and that choice created a foundation for genuine trust and mutual respect. We now had weekly dinners where we shared family stories, discussed her late husband's wisdom, and planned ways to honor his memory. My grandfather's college fund had ultimately served its intended purpose, just delayed by several years and requiring legal intervention to access. I used part of the restitution to pursue graduate education that had been financially impossible before, enrolling in a marketing management program that would advance my career significantly. Every class felt like a tribute to his belief in my potential and his investment in my future. The legal victory had attracted attention from other people dealing with similar family financial betrayals. I received dozens of messages from strangers sharing their own stories of inheritance theft, education fund misappropriation, and family financial manipulation. Many asked for advice about pursuing legal action, and I began volunteering with organizations that help people navigate family financial disputes. My chosen family had expanded to include close friends, mentors, and advocates who had supported me throughout the legal process. These relationships, built on mutual respect and genuine care rather than biological obligation, felt more authentic and nurturing than the family dynamics I had grown up believing were normal. I learned that family loyalty should be earned through trustworthy behavior, not demanded regardless of actions. The experience had taught me valuable lessons about setting boundaries, recognizing manipulation, and prioritizing my own well-being over family harmony. I no longer felt obligated to maintain relationships with people who had repeatedly demonstrated that they did not have my best interests at heart, even when those people were related to me by blood. Professional opportunities had emerged partly as a result of my experience advocating for myself through the legal system. My employer had been impressed by my research skills, persistence, and emotional resilience during the lawsuit, leading to a promotion and increased responsibilities. The confidence I had gained from successfully fighting for my rights translated into professional assertiveness and leadership capabilities. The financial security provided by the restitution allowed me to take career risks and pursue opportunities that would have been impossible while carrying student debt and lacking savings. I had started a small consulting business on the side, helping other young professionals navigate financial planning and career development. The irony was that my parents' theft had ultimately led to greater financial education and entrepreneurship than I might have achieved otherwise. Looking back, I realized that discovering my parents' betrayal had been devastating but ultimately liberating. Living with their lies and manipulation had been slowly eroding my sense of self-worth and reality. The truth, however painful, had allowed me to build authentic relationships and pursue goals based on my actual circumstances rather than false narratives about my family's financial limitations. The house I purchased with part of the restitution became a symbol of independence and self-reliance that my parents had always claimed to value but had actually prevented me from achieving through their deception. Hosting dinner parties for my chosen family in a space that I owned free and clear felt like the ultimate victory over years of financial manipulation and emotional gaslighting. My story had become a cautionary tale within our extended family and community about the importance of financial transparency, ethical behavior, and accountability in family relationships. Several relatives had made changes to their own estate planning and financial management practices after witnessing the destruction that secrets and favoritism could cause. The legal precedent set by my case had also helped other people pursuing similar family financial disputes. My attorney reported that the clear victory and substantial damages award had encouraged several other clients to pursue legal action against family members who had misappropriated inheritance or trust funds. Justice served not just my individual situation but created broader accountability. As I write this final chapter, I am grateful for the strength I discovered during the darkest period of family betrayal. The experience taught me that seeking justice, even when it costs important relationships, is sometimes necessary for personal healing and growth. I learned that true family members are those who support your well-being and growth, not those who exploit your loyalty for their own benefit. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted completely had been lying to you about something fundamental to your life? How did you handle the choice between family harmony and personal justice when they seemed mutually exclusive? I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below because these situations are unfortunately more common than we like to admit. Please hit that like button if this story resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life drama and justice stories, and share this video with anyone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves in difficult family situations. Thank you so much for listening to my journey, and I hope my experience reminds you that you deserve relationships built on honesty, respect, and genuine care. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to demand better treatment, even from the people who should have protected us from the beginning.